The Trump family used their time in office not to better the lives of everyday Americans, but instead to further their own, even to the detriment of the citizens they're supposed to serve. Now, this is nothing new. Trump and his family have been horrible forever, but we have a lot of ongoing investigations that haven't concluded yet, so we didn't really have any evidence to pinpoint and say, yeah, now we can actually prosecute them. That is until today, because a congresswoman just exposed Trump's corrupt daughter Ivanka for her dealings with China, because her business directly benefited from China. But it wasn't just Ivanka who was exposed, the whole Trump family was exposed for benefiting from China. And this is because Trump, despite saying that he was hard on China, seemed to really be good friends with Xi and had a lot of really good things to say about him. Take a look.
I think my colleague from South Carolina may have gotten confused about who said what, but these are things that Trump has said about Xi. Smart, brilliant, everything, perfect. We love each other. President Xi, who's a friend of mine, who's a very, very good man. There's nobody like that. The look, the brain, the whole thing. My feeling towards you is an incredibly warm one. This doesn't sound like someone that has any intentions of being hard on China, in my opinion.
And this new information that we got today exposes why Trump thought of Xi in such a good light. Because the Trump family received at least, and this is at least, $5.5 million. That's $5.5 million directly from China. They just gave him that money. Take a look at this.
And let's be clear about the facts. The former president spent his time in office collecting payments from China and many other countries through his businesses. He refused to divest from these businesses and broke decades of precedent. Now, we all know that the Constitution has a specific prohibition from receiving payments from foreign governments. Our committee, this committee, actually had an investigation that documented cash flowing directly from the Chinese government state-owned businesses into the businesses and pockets of the Trump family. Here is just some of that. We know that the People's Republic of China, including state-owned enterprises, sent more than $5.5 million to the Trump organization. And just to be clear, it's a minimum of $5.5 million because we only have data and a few of the Trump locations. It is likely much, much higher a number that China actually spent money and drove money into the Trump organization, of course, while Donald Trump was the president. This is unconstitutional and threatens our national security.
Now that is outrageous on its own, but Trump and Ivanka, who we'll touch on in a second, received more than just monetary gain from China. Trump also received hundreds of trademarks, and the two governments even lifted sanctions on each other to basically allow each other to do more business. Take a look.
Now, these, of course, aren't the only favors that the Trump family got from China. Just months after he took office, the Chinese government suddenly reversed long-standing policies and awarded Trump 38 new trademarks in China for industries related to restaurants and advertising. And of course, this went beyond just Donald Trump himself. In April of 2017, with Trump's White House in chaos, many people, including the Chinese government, were all trying to gain influence during this time. Now, President Trump also overruled our own security officials in our own government and publicly promised to save jobs at a Chinese government telecom company which was facing sanctions. And the list goes on and on and on.
But like I said, it wasn't just Trump. Ivanka also received trademarks from China, whose business directly benefited from their dealings. Now people might say, oh, well, Ivanka wasn't like POTUS or anything, so maybe she was just doing legal good business stuff in China. But as you'll see in these clips, the timeline says otherwise.
Ivanka Trump, who was working in the White House, got preliminary approval for 3 Chinese trademarks on the same day that Donald Trump had dinner with Xi Jinping at Mar-a-Lago. And remember, Ivanka never divested her company while she was working in the White House.
But what I continue to see is that Trump seems to only care about his money. Democrats on this committee publicly released financial documents detailing how Trump received over $5.5 million from the Chinese government. Not only that, these records also showed how President Trump and his White House senior advisor daughter, Ivanka, received hundreds of trademarks by the PRC during that time. So I'm going to skip to this timeline because I want to make sure we cover this. ZTE is a China telecommunications company which has had extremely close ties to the Chinese government, including reports showing ZTE employees entering and exiting Chinese spy facilities. Unfortunately, what we saw when we look at this timeline is that in May of 2018, China approved Ivanka's trademarks for bath mats, textiles, and baby blankets. May 7th, 2018, China approved 5 additional trademarks. May 13th, 2018, President Trump's tweets, he's instructed the Commerce Department to reverse its decision to sanction ZTE. June 7, 2018, Ivanka's company gets 3 more provisional Chinese trademark approvals the same day the Trump administration officially announces an agreement to lift the sanctions on a 7-year.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Sessions from Texas.
You notice how she was cut off directly after her time was up? The Republicans really don't want this information to get out because it makes their guy look really bad. Especially when one of the big things that they were saying was that Hunter Biden took a lot of money from China. Because remember the whole thing with Hunter Biden's laptop? How come we haven't heard a lot about that recently? Well, it's because the investigations they had going into that found nothing wrong. But then we have investigations going into Trump's family, and we see a whole bunch of wrongdoing. So it just goes to show you how the Republicans are just a bunch of hypocrites, because they accuse Biden of doing one thing, but actually it's their guy who's doing it. And actually, I don't think this is the first time this kind of thing has happened. It's really a lot of projection. So if the Republicans are accusing Democrats of doing something, it's probably because they're doing it themselves. Now, what's frustrating about all of this is we have so much evidence of wrongdoing from Trump and his family while he was in office. However, we have people in power who just are not willing to do anything because that's their guy. You know, they're directly in ties with him. And even the Republicans who are not in power, who are the ones voting for people in power, are going to say, oh, well, it's either fake news or it doesn't matter because it's my guy. But if it was Biden who did all this, they would just not stop talking about it. So it's hard to even have just a basic conversation about this because they won't contribute to that conversation in good faith, knowing that they're just going to either call it fake news or dismiss it. So what we really need to do is work together to vote out the people in power who are basically not allowing these, corrupt politicians to be held liable. And that's probably honestly because they're also corrupt, and if they were holding others liable, they would also be held liable. And then eventually when we finally get these people out, maybe we can start holding just people in politics more accountable, because that should already be happening, but everyone's corrupt nowadays, it seems like. So just make sure that you are getting out and voting this November.